pop your champagne bottles, everybody, because it looks like Kathleen Kennedy is leaving Lucasfilm. So, this all comes from a Puck article where this writer is essentially reporting that, as per three of his sources, Kathleen Kennedy has informed Disney as well as friends and associates that she will exit as the Lucasfilm president by the end of the year. Now, I will say, if you come over and read this Variety article, let me get out of the way of it. Variety is adding a little bit of a contradiction here where where she says, a separate source close to Kennedy, however, dismissed the initial report by Puck as pure speculation. So, interesting stuff. However, I actually kind of buy it at the end of the day. Mostly just because apparently she's 72 years old. Which, she could probably still continue for a few more years, but I feel like after you're 70, like, are you still wanting to be the president of Lucasfilm? I feel like I'm retiring, going down to a beach somewhere, just relaxing the rest of my years as a multimillionaire. So yeah, I kind of buy this. And honestly, where we're at right now with Star Wars, it's kind of the perfect time because we don't have a major film franchise, running at the moment, right? We're coming back with The Mandalorian and Grogu, which honestly feels like a Moana 2 situation where they're taking like a TV show and just kind of forming it into a movie just for the sake of making a Star Wars movie and getting one out in theaters. We're wrapping up Andor, right? That was something that was sort of an overarching thing that they're doing. They're not doing any more of the Acolyte, so... And, the Mandoverse is technically still going on, but, like, who the hell even knows, like, what they're doing with that at this point? So, like, right now is the perfect time, actually, for Kathleen Kennedy to step aside and then bring somebody new to sort of enact whatever new vision for Star Wars they may or may not have. And, I guess this obviously leads us to have maybe a little bit of a retrospective on Kathleen Kennedy's time here at Lucasfilm, and maybe talk a little bit about what were her successes, what were her failures, and ultimately, what is her legacy going to be going down as Lucasfilm president? Well, at least as far as her success and how Disney is probably going to view her, most YouTubers are probably not going to be honest with you about this, but I mean, it was a rousing success for her. They bought Disney, or they bought Star Wars, or Lucasfilm, but, they mostly just bought Star Wars for $4 billion, and they've made $12 billion from that purchase. I mean, listen, we're going to get into her failures in a second here, but objectively speaking, Kathleen Kennedy was a successful CEO of Lucasfilm. There really is just no getting around that. However, as a fan, as a viewer of Star Wars, she was an unmitigated disaster. She started off okay, I would say, with The Force Awakens, or, more than okay, right? Star Wars The Force Awakens was pretty good. But then you get into The Last Jedi, which was incredibly divisive. Like, the entire fan base was literally split in half, where half of them hated it, half of it loved it. And in a time like that, I think that's really where Kathleen Kennedy's weaknesses really started to show, because you could really tell that she did not have an overarching vision for Star Wars. She was kind of just letting each director sort of just do whatever they wanted to with the property, right? She let J.J. Abrams kind of just make his movie, and then she allowed Rian Johnson to just kind of make his movie. And on the one side of things, it's like, well, isn't that how movies should be made, without, studio executives meddling with it and just sort of letting an artist form his artistic vision? And it's like, well, sure, but not when you're making a multi-film arc, right? Like, not when you're trying to create an expansive universe, right? When you're doing something like the MCU or the DCU, yes, you do want your directors to have, put their artistic stamp on it, but at the end of the day, Kevin Feige needs to kind of step in and be like, okay, well, this is the story that we want to tell. This is the story that we need to tell. And especially when you're making a trilogy of movies, it's like, yeah, you kind of need an overarching vision. And I mean, then when we get into the Rise of Skywalker, I mean, that's really when when we saw that the Emperor didn't have any clothes, and we not only saw that Kathleen Kennedy does not have a vision for Star Wars, she's willing to just pathetically try to please literally everybody, and she just really ended up pleasing nobody with that movie. However, then we get into the streaming era. And then, she also had mixed results when it came to Star Wars spin-off movies, right? Because Solo, massive bomb, but Rogue One was actually a rousing success. So in general, not great when it comes to movies. Then we get into the streaming era of Star Wars. Again, similar to Force Awakens, started off strong, right? Everybody loved The Mandalorian Season 1. And here's actually where I will cut Kathleen Kennedy some slack, because a part of the puzzle here that most people probably aren't aware of is the fact that around this time, Disney actually ended up mandating both Marvel and Star Wars to be making a certain amount of shows every year, because they really wanted to pack Disney Plus with, IP based content, because they were, Hollywood thought that streaming was going to be the answer to all of their problems, right? They thought that streaming was going to be this infinite money glitch. And obviously we know now in 2025 that it's not really the case. But after The Mandalorian, we just started getting middling to terrible Disney Plus Star Wars show after Disney Plus Star Wars show after Disney Plus Star Wars show. I mean, it was a kind of a disaster. I mean, again, Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, generally speaking, people liked, but the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, The Acolyte, Ahsoka. I mean, like, and it got to the point where, you got to The Acolyte, and Star Wars fans had just simply had enough, right? The Acolyte was a massive viewership bomb, and they ended up canceling the second season. Of course, the bright shining example of that is Andor, and that, again, I will give Kathleen Kennedy credit where credit is due. Right, everybody blames her when all the bad Star Wars stuff happens, but credit where credit is due. Andor is the best thing that Star Wars has ever made. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. It makes the rest of Star Wars look like fucking the Wiggles. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was great, but just most of everything else is just middling to terrible. But again, not entirely her fault, because it's possible that if she didn't have that mandate from, Disney corporate, it's possible that she maybe wouldn't have gone so hard into streaming. And actually, same goes for Marvel Studios as well. That's why we're getting all those terrible Marvel Disney Plus shows on that end as well. So I don't think it's a coincidence, I guess, is all I'm saying, is that both Marvel and Star Wars at the same time started bombarding us with terrible Disney Plus shows. But at the end of the day, the buck does have to stop with somebody, and that somebody is Kathleen Kennedy, so it is a mark against her. So at the end of the day, while yes, Kathleen Kennedy objectively is a success story. She made Disney $12 billion off of a $4 billion purchase. There's no getting around it. It's successful. But just as a viewer, and as far as the content that she produced, it's been an unmitigated disaster. And while she made those $12 billion, somebody else needs to come in and repair the franchise so that it can, from now on, continue making money, I would say. And I guess now we can move on to who that somebody should be. Truth be told, I don't know. I know some people are going to bring up Dave Filoni, but the reality is that Dave Filoni is a creative. He's not a producer. There's nothing to suggest that he would be a good studio head. And some people are obviously also going to suggest Jon Favreau. Again, Jon Favreau is a creative. He's a director. There's nothing to suggest that he would be a good producer slash studio head. The reality is that it's somebody who we don't know. But what I will say is that I think the criteria should be somebody that is a great producer, is going to be a good studio head, has good business sense and whatnot, but that also has a passion for Star Wars. That is also that, like Kevin Feige, has a creative bone in his body so that he can have a vision for Star Wars. I actually wouldn't mind if they did something like how DC Studios is currently doing things, where you have maybe you get a Dave Filoni to be a co-studio head, but then you get a more generic producer guy, a more generic businessman guy like Peter Safran, for them to be co-heads, so that you have Dave Filoni sort of running the creative side of the business and have an overarching plan for Star Wars, but then you still have a guy who's good at all the other business stuff. That's also a possibility, to be fair. Although, to be honest, after Ahsoka Season 1, I also don't know that I really trust Dave Filoni to be the head of all of Star Wars. Although, to be fair, that also might just be Dave Filoni not being the best director. If he's more of the overarching story guy, maybe he would be good at that. So, I don't know. But at the end of the day, this is big news. This leads this is indicating a new era of Star Wars, and hopefully it is one for the better. But either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.